Hi and welcome to Transforming Hospitality, the show to discuss the good, the bad and the ugly of the Irish hospitality industry. We're fortunate enough to be sitting here today in Vaughan Lodge in beautiful Lahinch with fourth generation hotelier Michael Vaughan, and we want to cover a couple of topics that I feel are very important for the industry in the moment and maybe some stuff that might help us try and move this industry forward. Michael, welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
We were having a brief conversation there, Michael, about the whole tipping culture from the US and maybe the pros and cons of us looking at it being something that we might want to introduce into this industry here in Ireland. Care to share your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the first thing I'd like to say about tipping, and I suppose tipping originally, like all these good things, I think emanated particularly in the States, and the original idea and the meaning of tipping is to incentivize professional service. So the idea was that where you got professional service, that you incentivized it. And you know something, that's a really good idea. I guess as employers we should be tipping ourselves. Yep. But I think it's something that we're not great at. I think that oftentimes people you see who come back from the States, they do it pretty well. But in the States, and I've seen this in the States, if you don't provide a good service, the customer in the States won't tip you. He might tip you 10%. I've had an argument in a car park with a friend of mine whom I was highly embarrassed about, where he gave a 10% tip and the waitress ran out and said, "Was there something wrong with my service?" And he said, "Well, I was okay." And he said, "But you didn't give me 15%. He said, "No, I didn't." And then he actually had a set to in the car park with the waitress over what it was about the service that he didn't like. I was aghast. But then when I thought about it, I said, you know, that worked.
It is.
That worked. I'm sure that girl went back into that service and said, you know, well, I'm sure she said a lot of bad things about my friend, but she got on her game afterwards, I'm sure.
But she goes back with two clean options. Yeah. I can improve and be better and exceed my guests' expectations and expect to get a tip, or I can just do the job and drop the food and get 10%.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple in the States. And I think you're right. I think the key to it is people understanding on both sides of the fence. I'm supposed to exceed your expectations as a guest if I expect you to give me a tip. But also, I think for the guests coming into the property, you're supposed to tip if that person has gone above and beyond what you expected, if they've noticed the small little things, and if they've almost have you walking away from that experience feeling like you've just made a new friend who's really looked after your best interest, not God, I just spent 40 euros on a dinner for two people. Yeah. I think personally, for somebody who's worked in the US industry and worked in the Irish industry, I think it would go a long way to creating a more professional level of service in Ireland, because I think our employees and our team members would all of a sudden realise, wow, somebody is really going to recognise my efforts if I go above and beyond, and they're not if I don't. And they're going to call me out on it either way. Yeah, because
I work at a restaurant here every night. I mean, I supervise the restaurant, I serve in the restaurant, and the biggest arguments I have a great team working with me there, and they've seen, because a lot of our clients would be American clients, and they do well with good service. And you get in there, you serve the cocktails, you stick it to the table, you make sure that the glass of water isn't emptying too fast, these are the things you got to do. And when it comes to bigger parties, then there's one or two of my guys, and particularly a girl who works with me here, was always on, you know, we should put a service charge on parties over 10. And I keep saying, we're not going to do that. Service charge is the death knell of, I suppose, proper service, because now it's an expectation. Now it's almost like it's an obligation. You're going to get it. Yep. And I say, no, if the large party feels they're only going to give you 50 euros, that's their decision. They're the guests. They decide. That's what tipping is all about. Yep. And if you're going to embrace a tipping culture, you've got to embrace the fact that the guest will decide what you're worth. And, you know, as employers, I want to pay the best rate of pay for my staff, that they don't have to look for tips. But I think tips have a place in a restaurant.
Good. Folks, you've heard it here now today in the show. I mean, both myself and Michael, I think, are in agreement. There's definitely some huge benefits for both the people and for the guests to introducing this tipping culture into it. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on the show. If you found the topic interesting, please follow us on the show here today, or subscribe to the LinkedIn or Twitter channel. Michael, it's been a pleasure having you here, and look forward to talking some more.